Hi everyone, my name's Tillakeratne. I'm from the Viral Hepatitis Clinics Research Program at the Kirby Institute, and I'm here to take you through some of our work looking at trends in cause-specific mortality among people with hepatitis C virus in New South Wales, Australia. I'd just like to acknowledge the Ministry of Health for the provision of the linkage data and extend our appreciation to the people of New South Wales whose records form the basis of our research, and INSU for allowing me to present our work. I have nothing to disclose. As you may know, WHO has set a goal to eliminate viral hepatitis by 2030. This includes Hep C-related mortality targets, previously set in 2015 but later revised in 2021 from relative to absolute targets to that aim to reduce Hep C-related mortality to less or equal to 2 per 100,000 population. There's growing evidence that there's reductions in Hep C-related morbidity and mortality in countries where DAA access is available, direct-acting antivirals, but there's a lack of comprehensive analysis in population. There's a lack of comprehensive analysis in population level mortality patterns. Thus, a need to have a look at the impact of DAA therapy on mortality. Thus, we aim to answer this question, whether Hep C-related mortality patterns or trends have shifted with universal access to DAA therapies. We looked at this in New South Wales, Australia, among Hep C diagnosed individuals. Firstly, looking at the mortality trends between the beginning of 2002 to the end of 2021. We also compared proportions of cause-specific mortality between the pre-elimination and elimination era being the beginning of 2015 to the end of 2021, the beginning of which it coincides with the WHO's call for elimination, but also compassionate DA access for those with advanced liver disease in Australia, and also it follows unrestricted subsidized DA access that came in 2016. Also focusing on the elimination era, we looked at all-cause and cause-specific mortality, mortality rates and mortality risk, and also we determined factors associated with all-cause mortality within this era, the elimination era. We did all this using data linkage, which simply put is the linking of administrative records relating to a set of individuals. And to begin this, we looked at Hep C notifications, which in New South Wales are antibody-positive results, to which we linked to several data sets, cause of death records. To further characterize our cohort, we looked at hospitalization records, to look at injecting drug use and people with alcohol use disorder. We also looked at opioid agonist therapy dispensing records and incarceration records during the study period. We included people who were notified from 1995 to the end of 2021 and who were alive from 2002. And we excluded people who were notified before 1995 due to data quality of early antibody assays. Post-mortem notifications we also excluded, and records before 2002 due to the fact that hospitalizations did not have ICD-10 coding, which were required for us to define injecting drug use and alcohol use disorder. We devised 5 cause-specific mortality groups to look at, utilizing the underlying cause of death in the mortality records, which were ICD-10 coded. Liver and drug-related mortality was defined based on previously validated definitions, and to that we added cancer and circulatory system-related mortality, which were designed to give an overview of mortality patterns, and finally other cause-related mortality, which was created by excluding ICD-10 codes that were used in the other 4 classifications. Our variables of interest included sex, birth cohort, country of birth, region of Hep C notification, and recent injecting drug use, recent AUD, recent OAT, and recent incarceration, which recent we defined as observation within 12 months of mortality or by the end of follow-up. So throughout the study period, 2002 to the end of 2021, there were 112,046 individuals notified with Hep C that were alive during this period and contributed to the analyses. of which 96,659 were alive by the end of the study period, and 15,387 had deceased. Overall, the study cohort was 64% male, majority were Australian-born, about a third with recent incarceration, about 40% with recent injecting drug use, about a quarter with OAT, about a fifth with AUD. And of those who deceased by the end of the study period, 65% of them had recent injecting drug use within a year of their death, 39% for both OAT and AUD. There's a large difference to those who were alive by the end of the study period, to which I've pasted the percentages below. Next, looking at mortality trends throughout the period, looking at the cause groups. First, all-cause liver-related drug in black, red, and pink. We see a sort of increasing rate of mortality peaking around the 2015 mark before a slight stabilization or indication of decline. As you can see, liver-related mortality, while there is a decline present, it's still above the WHO target of less or equal to 2 per 100,000 population. And finally, looking at circulatory system cancer and other related causes, there are marginal increases, but this may in fact be due to just the aging cohort. Next, looking at comparisons in proportions of mortality between the two eras, we see again decreases in liver and drug, coloured in red and pink, and general stability in the other cause groups, except cancer, where we see an increase in proportion in the elimination era. There's a lot in this slide, but I'll just go over the highlights. It's looking at age-adjusted, sex-specific mortality rates and standardized mortality ratios in the elimination era. All-cause mortality rate was 119.7 per 10,000 person years, was higher in males. It was found 2.3 times higher all-cause mortality risk among this cohort when compared to the general New South Wales population, which was also higher in males. And on the bottom right is the rates for the mortality rates for each of the cause groups, which, as you can see, was higher in males than versus females. And on the left here is the graph of standardized mortality ratios. I've put a break in the x-axis as you can see, liver and drug-related mortalities carries really exceedingly high risk. Liver and drug had 18 and 13 times higher risk than mortality risk than the general population. The other groups were comparable in terms of mortality risk to the general population, except other cause-related mortality, which had an SMR of about 2.3. Finally, we looked at, we did a Cox proportional hazards model, looking at factors associated with all-cause mortality in the elimination era among people with Hep C. This model was adjusted for birth cohort and the Charlson Comorbidity Index, which is a marker of health status and comorbid conditions. Also, the asterisk symbols were treated as time-varying covariates, and the largest risk factor identified was recent injecting drug use, which increased mortality risk about 7-fold, followed by recent AUD, which more than doubled risk. Location seemed to play a role. Outer metropolitan and rural areas had a slightly higher mortality risk compared to those living in residing in a metro area. Females and being born overseas carried slightly lower risk of mortality. And finally, we've identified 2 protective elements against mortality, which is recent OAT and recent incarceration. Yeah. So, has Hep C-related mortality trends shifted with universal access to DA therapies? In New South Wales, we've seen a significant turnaround in all-cause mortality burden among people with Hep C since 2015. There's a decrease in liver and drug-related mortality, and further evidence of the protective effect of OAT against mortality underscores its need to be further maintained and broadened its coverage. However, there's still challenges. As you can see, mortality risk is still double the New South Wales population for this cohort, and liver and drug-related mortality risk is extremely high. And also, there is AUD that is a cofactor that definitely needs more further look within this population. And just future key areas of action, integrating treatment of Hep C care with other substance use and AUD sort of avenues. Harm reduction strategies, expanding on OAT and maintaining coverage. Addressing healthcare disparities, including distance between metro and non-metro areas. And finally, to further decrease Hep C-related mortality, earlier screening and detection of and surveillance of HCC and advanced liver disease. I find if we target these four, we will see further reductions and further reach towards the WHO targets. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a fantastic talk. If there's any questions in the room, please just raise your hand. Yeah, we have one up front. One moment.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit more about the protective effect of recent incarceration?
Sorry, 1 second.
Yeah.
It was
We can collect 2 questions from the audience if you like.
No, that was a good question. It was quite surprising when we did, well, not quite surprising, but it was interesting when we did discover that. But it does have a weird message about incarceration, but also it might be due to the fact that in New South Wales prisons there's been a very structured healthcare delivery, especially in regards to Hep C care, especially during the 2015 period onwards, that may contribute to what we see in terms of protective effect. But yeah, might be just contextual to New South Wales prisons. Yeah, that's about it.
I have a follow-up on
Yeah,
that
sure.
one, and I'm wondering whether you think you're able to measure injection drug use equally, if it could be like exposure misclassification, if you can measure the injection drug use while they're in prison, if it's based on ICD-10 codes and hospitalizations, or do you have outpatient billing data from the prisons to be able to measure that?
You could possibly do that, definitely. We do have reception and discharge dates of the prisons, so we could sort of time that with the basis of hospitalization dates and whether they were hospitalized for injecting drug use. So it could be possible.
Okay, I think we'll move on.